Hey everybody, welcome to the channel. It's Freeloader from Team AQZ. It is time to look at some new Muna cards from Skybound Odyssey. I am pretty excited for this one, as for a long time now, Muna has felt somewhat like a one hero, one playstyle faction, at least from a competitive sense. I know Rin and some festival hybrid decks have been breaking that mold a little, but in general, I'm still excited to just see all the new tools and options, new playstyles maybe that we can approach in the Muna faction. Before we head on into the card ratings, for the sake of context, let us quickly appreciate the new Muna hero, which is of course Kauri and Puff. Playing against Sigismar has not been everybody's favorite experience, but with Kauri and Puff you always get to play against Sigismar. Giving your opponent a woolly back is quite a big downside, but drawing a card is one of the favorite things any altered player, or any card game player in general, for that matter, can do. So definitely a very interesting set of abilities here. I think because of the intrinsic card advantage this hero provides, this will allow for a very after you centric playstyle, which is a little bit new to the Muna faction. I think you need some really powerful cards to justify giving your opponent a 1/1/1. Alright, I won't rate this card yet, I'll rate it at the end of the video. Let's get on into the actual cards themselves. First up, among the Muna cards, we have the Resentful Robin. This card is really cool. I think at common, you have the highest statted one cost character in the game, and that is just phenomenal. Resentful Robin is a great card. Yes, it is specifically easy to activate in Kauri, but also in a way it's less stat value because you're already giving them that 1/1/1 that you need to outstat. But even in Tasia, in Rin, I think Resentful Robin is going to be really good, right? I can see opening lines where if you're playing against Kojo, you can match their first play with something like a Sneezer Shroom if you're playing Tasia, and then whatever their second play is, you sit on top of it with a Resentful Robin, and you just 1-0 them turn 1 in a more tempo-based Tasia list, for example. So I think Resentful Robin is just a phenomenal card. At rare, it gets a very minor upside in my opinion, that from reserve it ascends. Ascending in my head is just plus 0.5, plus 0.5, plus 0.5, as it functions as a tiebreaker in all the stats, but doesn't count as a full stat point. I am a little lower on this because the common already does most of what you care, and I think ascend value is especially lower if you already have uneven stats on a card, so for that reason Resentful Robin is getting a 4-star common, but only a 2-star at rare. Then we immediately move on to the Helpful Pelican. You know, this card looks very vanilla, and it is very vanilla, but I also think this is the type of card Muna really needs at common. If you go through Muna commons at the moment, you get a lot of very understated stuff. And Helpful Pelican from hand is very slightly understated, but from reserve it is a rare Ordis trooper in terms of value, and that's really, really good. So I quite like this. I think it's a great common that you can just throw in your deck. At rare, it does gain the ability to potentially resupply you quite often. This might lead to some very abusable things, like this being an ongoing potential resupply at rare instead of at unique makes this card have so much potential that I need to be a little bit afraid of it. Now I don't think this is overwhelmingly busted. Again, I think this one's mostly a Kauri card. This one does have some nice synergies that we're going to be seeing later on. I'm not 100% sure how good the rare is going to be, as it does cost a bit more from reserve as well, so now you're paying understated character twice instead of once. I like this card in both common and rare. I think it's just really cool. Helpful Pelican is getting both 3-star at common and rare from me. Moving on to Eru, Emissary of the Wild, somehow having both the shortest and longest name in the altered universe. Eru is really interesting, and you're gonna maybe think I'm coping with this, but this common is really good. It helps Rin a lot have consistent turn 1s where you actually just get to say, I win on grass, activate Rin hero ability, 2 cards in reserve, we traded 1 for 1, almost guaranteed, and that is worth a lot. It's really good. Even in other decks, in fact, it's a free cost, makes it a origin consideration. I really like this card. I think it's solid. At rare, losing stats is pretty hefty. There is, of course, with Kauri, value of letting your opponent keep characters around. There's some interesting reserve manipulation you can do, where if your opponent plays like 2 cards from reserve and then 1 from hand, you can anchor the card they played from hand in order to make them overflow reserve the following turn. But I think that's a bit niche, and using a rare slot on it is expensive, so I'm a little down on air rare. It's going to get 3 stars at common and 2 stars at rare. Following that up with the Armored Bird, I do believe this was the first Muna reveal we got. And at common, this has a niche. I think the niche the Armored Bird common has is the dedicated festival decks. Now the problematic thing for this niche is that since set 1, where it was actually a playable deck, dedicated festival decks haven't been looking too hot, but this is something you can anchor in Argent to stall 2 expeditions. Almost guaranteed, not 100% guaranteed, but pretty close. So that's cool for a common slot. Otherwise, I don't expect this to see that much play. At rare, it gains an extra stat point and the ability to potentially lose Defender. And I think this will fit right into Kauri. Kauri, I think, will be able to have this after you play style, and Armored Bird, rare, I think can function like an Anansi does in Fen, where you save it for the end, you just slap it down, it's a bunch of stats that is hard to play around for your opponent, you dodge their removal by playing it so late, and you will be able to set up the condition, trade 1 for 1, be happy about it. I think this card is going to be fine. I don't think it's going to completely break the mold. It's not as good as a Nanzi common, but it definitely does stuff. I'm going to give Armored Bird a 2-star common and a 3-star at rare. Then we move on into Colorful Cuckoo. This card, by the way, the art upgrade from common to rare, I think has to be the biggest rare upgrade of any card so far. I mean, that is absolutely beautiful. Anyway, Colorful Cuckoo, I think, is really good. If you compare it to a Dracana in Tasia, where Dracana sees play, you can look at this as, if you're going first, you play Colorful Cuckoo onto an empty board, it will always be better than Dracana. Because if your opponent tries to contest the expedition, it gains that extra boost. So it would become a free, whereas Dracana, the turn you play, is only a 1 free. That's really, really good. The big downside Colorful Cuckoo has compared to Dracana is that it is not a plant, which is something that a lot of Tasia decks do care about a lot, and might actually be enough of a downside that Colorful Cuckoo won't see play in that particular build alongside Ogun and Perma-Anchor uniques. On the other hand, this card is so good. I mean, both at common and rare, the rare doesn't fundamentally change too much other than, you know, you get the upside of ramping, so maybe you slam it into a couple different strategies. And also, by the way, just beyond Tasia as well, I think this does really well in all kinds of decks. Like, I think it's going to be good in Kauri. I think you will consider it in Rin as well. This card is so versatile, it's so solid overall, and really the only downside it has in my mind is that it is not a plant. I am giving Colorful Cuckoo both 4 stars at common and rare. Let's move on to the Migratory Crane. This has a really cool effect, but I wonder if it actually does anything. At common, the Migratory Crane is quite understated, missing 2 stat points. It does have interesting implications. If you play this onto the Ordis recruit, and your Sigismar opponent then plays something else to beat out the Migratory Crane, you can say, hey, you win this expedition, I'm just going to trade expeditions with you. So I think the card that you can really compare Migratory Crane to is actually Hooked, where it's this card that says, we are trading expeditions on the turn you play me. And now Hooked is a good card at rare because it draws a card. Is Migratory Crane good enough? I suspect not. I suspect that this is just a bit too understated and that the effect is just a little too undervalued for it to have that same pizzazz, if you will, as Hooked has. I don't think it's going to quite make the cut. At rare, it does have good stats again, which does help, but then you're also using a rare slot on this card. Is that worth it? I don't 100% see it. Migratory Crane is getting a 1-star common from me and a 2-star at rare. Then we get to the Drowsy Dodo. Now don't be fooled, it might be called a Drowsy Dodo, but this is closer to Schrodinger's Dodo, a dodo that is both awake and asleep at all times. So easy to force your opponent to play into the expedition opposing this and make it wake up when you're playing on any Muna hero, to be honest. You just play Drowsy Dodo first and either they completely concede the expedition, or you just play a 1-cost something into the Drowsy Dodo expedition and you win, and then for next turn you have a free 2 for absolutely no cost after you traded expeditions the previous turn, so you gave up absolutely nothing. I think this card is phenomenal. It is so good at common. I wouldn't be surprised if this sees play in every single deck except maybe Perma and Cortasia. But man, this card is phenomenal. It's also worth pointing out that the one deck that's kind of competing in the Muna faction with Perma and Cortasia is Festival Rin, and these decks are going to love Drowsy Dodo. And like, this card does it all. I think this might actually be a 5-star common. At rare, it loses the versatility that it has at common. It gains the boosting up, so maybe in Kauri you consider this, where the common is probably also at its weakest, to be honest. For 90% of Muna decks, I don't think you're ever considering this rare, because it is no longer Schrodinger's Dodo. Now it is actually a Drowsy Dodo. And why would you have a Drowsy Dodo when you can have Schrodinger's Dodo? I don't know. I don't get it. 5 stars at common, 2 stars at rare. With that, we can move on to the Wyvern, which is a really cool card. I love this effect. Obviously, you have a failsafe if you're playing Kauri. You're always going to have a target for this. But realistically, you don't want to hit a woolly sheep. You want to hit something like an Ordis Trooper, a boosted up Sap Sniffer, maybe a Buddha token, maybe even a Halua token. In general, I think it should be possible for you to do so. I wonder if it is enough value, because at 4 cost, this is a bit clunky. Your opponents will be able to play around this with after you effects. I'm not sure if common or rare is better. I think for non-Kauri decks, the rare is a bit risky to run, because you're really relying on your opponent to play a lot of 1 costs or have multiple tokens. In Kauri, I think the rare is going to be pretty reliable and quite good, honestly. I'm going to give it 2 stars at common and 3 stars at rare, I think. Then we can move on to Zaratan. Now, Zaratan to me is one of the true Kauri cards. Most of these cards have been very flexible in what decks they can go into. There's a lot of application to them, and honestly, I'm super excited for a ton of these. Zaratan is one that I really think you're only playing in Kauri. There is a big issue Zaratan has, which is that Zaratan looks like it counters Sigismar, as Sigismar is the character that spams the most characters into play. But the issue is that the Ordis faction also has license withdrawal, so Zaratan is kind of a trap. Often in your best Zaratan matchups, it is just going to get you 2-0'd because they license withdrawal this and then double advance. And I don't love that for this character. It's weird because I think this card's actually quite good. At rare, you know, you get even more stats, but I don't think the upgrade is in general worth it if you're going to be trying to run this card. But I think the card is still solid. Very hard to evaluate because it's so metagame dependent and so weak potentially to specific cards. I'm going to give Zaratan 3 stars at common, but only 2 stars at rare for that reason. Then we go to Kauri's Intervention. This card is quite nice. I like that they have a big tough 5 on a card like this. It's very cool, a temporary protection effect. I don't know if this is going to see the most play in Muna. I mean, funnily enough, this really helps protect your Zaratan from license withdrawal. So maybe that is just what you're going to be doing in Kauri. You're going to play common Kauri's Intervention. You're just going to put into mana until you're into a Ordis faction, and then you're going to keep it and play alongside Zaratan, win the game for free. Everyone rejoices and is happy. Realistically, there's a big price to playing this at common, which is that it's not the most reliable card. It has fleeting, so it's just 1 after you. If you have enough high cost things that you want to protect, it is good. But outside of eternal characters, because eternal characters tend to get removed as a first action of the turn very often, so Kauri's Intervention won't help you always against that. And other than that, if you want to like pre-tough 5 your characters, your main targets are Halua, Hydrocana the turn you play it, and Zaratan. I don't think there's all that many others. The rare upgrade, also just to mention it, is I think a pretty significant upgrade over the common. The fact you get to play it twice, or in Argent you get to discard it and protect like an aloe vera or something, is very nice. But is it worth a rare slot? I don't know. This card does confuse me. I think it will definitely see testing, but I do believe ultimately people won't be able to justify it in their list. So I'm giving it both 2 stars at common and rare. Then we move on to Pan. Now Pan looks very similar to what is currently probably the best common sabotage card in the game, which is the Tooth Fairy in Ysmir, as it has the same cost, same stats, and sabotage. It just has the little downside of you are giving your opponent a woolly back, which makes this functionally a 0/0/0, which is pretty bad. It's a lot worse than Tinkerbell. But what this also means is, because you can generate value off of giving your opponent a woolly back, the real question is the woolly pack package good? And overall, I gotta say, I've read a lot of the cards highly so far. A lot of them can fit into a Kauri shell. I'm gonna give Pan 3 stars at common, and only 2 stars at rare, just because I don't think the sleep is very relevant. You can maybe find some application with it, again, for the same archetype, because your opponent has this token for even longer. And then we're into Tane. Tane, I think, is very hard to evaluate. I am comparing it to the Coniferal Cone Man from set 1, which is at common a 5-cost 3/3/3 with Arrow Anchored, and at rare a 4-cost 3/3/3 with Arrow Anchored. Tane at common has 1 more cost, but 1/1/1 more in stats as well, and anchored as well. So those stick around, and you can kind of see it as 2/2/2 bigger. It has this other arrow as well, which I don't know how relevant that's going to be, but it's interesting. At rare, it's even bigger. And I think Tane has a lot of stuff going for it. The fact that it's 6 cost means that it will be great as a lead up for your ramp Tasia or your ramp Muna turns, as ramp decks in the Muna faction have a lot of payoffs at 7 cost. But some of those payoffs, like Hydrocana, will cause you to lose 2-0 one day as well, and Tane can prevent that. I think in Tasia especially, this is a 6 cost. If you're playing rare Tane, this is a 6 cost, 6/6/6 anchored tough 1, which already sounds kind of worth playing. I don't think it's insane. I don't think it enables any deck as an engine or anything, but it is cool. Also, this is pretty good with Ganesha. Gains anchored, you get random boosts of things in your reserve if you're playing like Colorful Cuckoo, which you probably are. So I'm giving Tane 2 stars at common and 3 stars at rare. Then we move to Puff's Challenge. Puff's Challenge, even in the best of cases, is a 3-cost send target character to reserve, where it competes with a lot of other options like Mana Reaping, which can also hit landmarks, is a bit more reliable, and also kind of functions like a discard since you're completely rid of that card. Yes, has a downside, but so does Puff's Challenge. It also competes with Lost in the Woods, which also has a similar set of up and downsides. There's merit to this card, but I don't really see it. I don't think you're getting enough value for this. At rare, the fact that it can be a 2-cost card is genuinely interesting. I think fits very well into potential after you playstyle that Kauri could have. So tentatively, I'm going to give Puff's Challenge 1 star common, but 3 stars at rare. Muna Signet is the next card on our list. Muna Signet is interesting, but I think it has a big problem. And the problem is that, as all signets, this card is very flexible. You have 3 different effects that you can choose from. I think specifically the anchored effect is at least potentially valuable in no matter where you play this card. The issue I see with this is that the terrain marker is something you're interested in if you are playing Rin, most likely. Meanwhile, the woolly backs are not interesting if you're playing Rin. Vice versa, if you are playing Kaori, I don't think you care about the terrain marker a lot, but the woolly backs are nice. So a lot of the upside of these signets, which is their flexibility, you actually lose because depending on what deck this in, you are never choosing one option. Are the remaining options strong enough to justify that? I'm a little bit on the fence with this one, but I don't 100% see it. I do think of the signets, it is one of the weaker ones. At rare, you get to choose 2. which in a way is even worse because now you're locked into 2 because you don't want that third option depending on what deck you are in. But it is specifically for Colorful Cuckoo in Kaori really nice to be able to boost up Colorful Cuckoo and re-anchor it, which is the only reason the rare is getting a 2-star rating, and the common is also getting a 2-star rating from me. Then we go to Counting Sheep. Counting Sheep is cool. Funnily enough, this is also a card that for dedicated festivalists is going to be phenomenal. Otherwise though, I think it's pretty weak. The issue this card has is that it is 2 cost 0/0/0. It doesn't do anything. It is purely to set up your synergies or your festival win condition. I don't think you can justify that even in Kaori. The rare is the same but at free cost. The free cost, and it's a true 0/0/0. The rare is even a 0/0/0 for 2 turns in a row. As much as I would love to rate this card higher because I love Festival Muna decks, it's just too bad. Like, it doesn't do anything. So I'm going to give Counting Sheep at common 2 stars just because it has a niche, and at rare, it is getting a 1-star rating. Now we are going into one of the cool hype cards for the set, which is Joining Fates. I referenced it earlier, and it is getting a little bit of support as well. Alright, let's actually start with the rare, because this is mostly a multiplayer upgrade in rare, as one of the 2 changes is target player may immediately play a character, so you could target your ally with this, which is cool. I like that they're going this direction a little bit with some of the rare slots. The other part of it is that you may play the character for free, but Joining Fates is also a bit more expensive. I did take a quick look at all of the 10 cost uniques in the Muna faction, and most of them are Hydrocanas, so probably not going to be worth it alongside the Joining Fates. But let's get to the juice of it, which is the common, where you get a lot of cool combinations with this. Halua is a card we're going to look at in a little bit that works really well with this. You are getting, look, I know it's a bit of a meme deck, but you are getting Ganesha with this, which is kind of scary, because this allows you to get 2 Ganeshas out kind of easily. Your first one you play with Joining Fates, and it's just anchored for the next one. But I think this card it has just enough targets that I think you're happy with, that I'm giving the common a 3-star rating, and the rare, of course, only a 1-star. The final in-faction card is the Woolly Woolly Field. Phenomenal art. This is a very neat card. It is, again, just dedicated synergy card for Kaori. I think the rare, at 2 cost, you can compare this to Haven, and in a way it is better, because you're not only getting the boost, but you're also giving your opponent a Woolly back, which hopefully synergizes enough with your highly synergistic deck that it actually gains you functionally around 2 boosts of value. Like on Colorful Cuckoo plus Zaratan plus the boost this card gives you. So at that point it's actually 3 boosts, but you lose one of those boosts because you gave your opponent a 1/1/1. Is that good enough? I mean, if I'm getting 2 boosts a turn for a 2-cost landmark, I am very happy. Is that going to happen? I don't know. Plus, when I play Haven in Traced, I get to resupply when it enters. With Woolly Woolly Field, my opponent gets to double advance. I would be really low on this card, but in the demo deck, this card was actually really good. I think you can play around it. You have a lot of good synergies. You have a lot of good cards that kind of work with this. I'm going to give this 2 stars at common because I hate 3-cost landmarks, and 3 stars at rare, but I might be way off on this one. Anyway, that was it for the in-factions. Let's head on to the out-of-faction cards. For the out-of-faction cards, we are starting with Halua Raging Leviathan. This big character, Leviathan, I think it's going to fit right into the Muna faction. There are some nice synergies going on. The ideas of a Muna ramp deck, there's already ideas existing for that. And, you know, we already looked at Joining Fates, which goes very, very well with this card. And I kind of like it. It has the tough one that they're slapping onto more characters as well, which is great. And I think this is just solid. The At Dusk is nice. I don't think it's what makes or breaks the card. The draw card discard ability is nice. I don't think it's what makes or breaks the card. It's just solid. So I'm giving Halua a 3-star rating. Then we move on to Sticky Shroom. And now this one, I'm not going to lie, I was probably going to rate this at 2 stars, but I got a little bit of intel from our local Tasia festival player in Team AQZ. And I think Sticky Shroom is actually going to fit into that quite well, specifically because it can early block a Sarengar, which is quite important. It can set you up with eventual resupplies, and it's another anchor condition to potentially win the game with, so you have to worry about that even less. And I think it's not like insane, it's not the reason you're playing that deck, but it is a solid inclusion, and because of that I'm actually going to give it a 3-star rating instead. This makes us move on to the Lyra Mapmaker, which to me it's hilarious that this has the rare text line of if 5 or more single terrain regions are visible, target character gains a sleep, because it is pretty hard to get those terrain markers. You have Ordis Signet that can help you do this, and you have Persephone that can help you do this, and a very couple other cards that maybe as well help you with this. And for Persephone, you know, yes, theoretically you can get Persephone to do it single-handedly, but then you and your opponent need to be on 2 different multi-terrain regions to turn them into single terrain regions. It's really unreliable. If you can get it off, it would be nice for these flex festival or semi-festival strats. As is, I think this card is too bad. I don't think this is reliable at all, and you'd rather play just about any other rare card. Lyra Mapmaker is a 1-star card. Forest Nymph is a cool one. This one does feed into that similar Ordis Signet Persephone kind of bundle, but I actually think Forest Nymph is just a bit better. It has the arrow ability in the out of faction, which means you actually get to attack your opponent's resources quite aggressively, and this might be really nice on Rin for that reason. I don't know, I kind of like it. I'm gonna give Forest Nymph a 2-star rating. Moving on to Daikokuten, I'm not gonna sit on this card too long. It's a very low rating for me. It's a 1-star just because there's going to be enough base cost 4 or more things to go around. In some matchups it might be like, you get to cheese this out for free. Even then you're getting a free cost 5/5/5 big whoop, so I don't think you need to take this risk. It's a 1-star card. Mapmaker's Boon is a very similar deal. Getting 3 or more single terrain regions is very unreliable in the Muna faction, and even if you do, you get 4 boosts for 2 cost, which is a good rate, but physical training doesn't see play, and it's reliable 3 boosts at the same cost, so I don't see it for this card. It is also getting a 1-star rating. Then we get to the Ugly Duckling. I really like this card for one reason alone. Well, not one reason alone, it's very cute as a card. But what I really like about this card is that it has a pay 1 ability that is actually worth paying. You're getting 1.5, 1.5, 1.5 in stats out of paying 1. And that means Ugly Duckling is truly a very flexible card. When you just need a 1-cost body to advance, that's what you're getting. If you need a 2-cost, decently statted character, that's what you're getting. If you need a discard ability to get a little bit of extra stats, that's what you're getting. So this is a great 0-cost play, it's a great 1-cost play, and it's a great 2-cost play. And that's really flexible. It is a little bit below rate in all of its forms, and I wonder if that flexibility is enough to justify a rare slot, right? At common, this would be an auto-include in almost any deck. At rare, you're giving up something quite valuable to play this. I kind of like it. I'm giving it 3 stars. Following that, we do have the Ascended Trooper. Now, the Ascent mechanic, there are a couple support cards for this in Muna, but they're all rare because they're all out of factions from Ordis, and I don't think you can reliably build a deck around that. There's not enough easy ways to ascend, and the payoffs are not big enough. As is, Ascended Trooper is kind of a 2.5, 2.5, 2.5 stat character, which is great for a 2-cost character. The reason I think this card is kind of bad is because Drowsy Dodo exists. Why would I play a card with less stats than Drowsy Dodo that also is not anchoring or sleeping itself when I need it to? I think Ascended Trooper is probably not going to make it, and I'm giving it a 2-star rating. Gargoyle, on the other hand, I like a little bit more. The skewed stats that it has and choosing which expedition it sends, I think is significantly more valuable, right? If I could play a Bravos Pathfinder with an arrow to ascend an expedition, I would. At least I would in Kojo. I don't know if the Kojo equivalent really exists in Muna, but they are getting more cards that feel good to play, and I think Gargoyle is one of them. I'm giving it a 3-star rating. Ordis Messenger and Ordis and Ascended Trooper are the same card. In my opinion, there is going to be so rarely the difference between them of that you actually playing them into an Ascended Expedition, unless you are really building a bad deck, that they functionally do the same thing. Still, I think in the case where you do already have an Ascended Expedition, I think Ordis Messenger is slightly worse because I value one boost more than I value an Aerolift token. And because of that, just to kind of send a message, just because these cards are a bit too similar, I'm giving Ordis Messenger a 1-star rating. Then we have Nymph, another out of faction, and this one's interesting because it's actually better than both of the in-faction versions for Nymph. It's kind of a solid card, that is until you compare it to Hydrocana, which also comes in as a 7-cost 4/4/4 Eternal. At rare, the Hydrocana does, however, already have a little bit of tough, so it's harder to remove. And then we compare the at noon abilities, where Nike says 1 expedition gains 0.5, 0.5, 0.5 in stats for this turn, and Hydrocana says I gain 4 boosts forever. And I think Hydrocana is just a little bit better. It is just a 1-star card. Out of Clear Sky is the next card on the list, and it has the potential to be a 2-cost send target character to reserve if at least one of your expeditions ascended. I don't think this ascend package is going to be doing much, and consequently I don't think Out of Clear Sky is going to be doing much. So I'm giving it a 1-star rating. Ordis Signet is similar. It's just very expensive for, I don't think, enough value. It has fleeting, yeah, you can put something to sleep, but both of the other effects aren't great for festival lists. Then you can boost the entire board, which is kind of nice if you're going for stats with the asleep, but it's pretty linear, and I think you have better cards that can do similar things. With target character in Expedition or in Reserve loses all its boost, that is too niche in my opinion. So the effects just aren't quite there for this card. I'm going to give it 2-star just because it is flexible and maybe someone will find an angle to squeeze one in somewhere, but I don't think the card's great. Soar is next. This card I think is very comparable to Rallying Call as a common in faction for the Ordis faction, and this does a little bit more in the sense that it ascends. It also does a little bit less because it doesn't wake up your character. It's a rare slot, so that makes it kind of a lot worse in my opinion. The only reason I have a little bit of hope for Soar is because boosting is scary in the Muna faction, as there are a lot of uniques that trigger off of it, and 1-cost cards are also always scary. Soar does all of those things, but I don't think it does them very well. Still, we've all had that moment where we've tried to play So and we wished it wasn't exhausted, it didn't have cooldown. Soar might be that card for you, so I'm giving it 2 stars. Madjet is the out-of-faction landmark that Moon is getting, and as with all 2-cost landmarks that give you some kind of stats on board or something similar, I compare it to the Haven. The Haven gives you 1/1/1 in stats every turn, Madjet gives you 0.5, 0.5, 0.5. The Haven has an air resupply, Madjet has nothing. They are both rares. Madjet is a 1-star card. Caladrius is next on the list. This one's really cool, has high potential, has the same effect as Wyvern. The big difference here is that it is a lot cheaper. So this means it's going to be easier for you to get in a couple after use and then get off this effect and hit a key card like a Sapsniffer, like a Ordis Trooper, like a unique that your opponent really doesn't want to have hit. And I think Caladrius might be quite solid for that reason. It's nice, of course, in Kauri that you always have the backup target of a Woolly Sheep, but I don't think that you're super happy hitting a Woolly Sheep with this, as it does make it a 2-cost 2/2 free, which for a rare slot is kind of underwhelming. Still, I think you're going to find ways to play this in some Muna deck, and I'm giving it 3 stars. The final card is Bait, and Bait is high potential as you can steal a lot of characters. It's hard to get your opponent this many tokens. Using a rare slot on a card like this feels weird if you're just hoping to run into Kojos and Haluas. Even if you're giving if you're going out of your way to give your opponent free sheep and then you steal this and it's a 6 stat point swing, is it really a 6 stat point swing if you gave your opponent all those stats to begin with? I'm not convinced by this card. I'm giving it a 2-star rating. Finally, we can circle round and rate Kauri and Puff. I think from what we've seen, we've actually given out a lot of high ratings to various of the new Muna cards. What is interesting to me though is that a lot of the highly rated cards I think are very flexible. They can go into a lot of the Muna hero decks, not necessarily Kauri. So the question is the Kauri strategy better than what Rin is getting, for example? Because Rin I think is getting a lot of these really high cost, high star cards seem very playable for her. Kauri's going to have to compete with that. The strategy is there. You have some big payoffs with Zaratan. Perhaps you can go more into this after you playstyle. Drowsy Dodo looks phenomenal, and Colorful Cuckoo looks absolutely phenomenal as well. Maybe you can get like a weird festival ramp strategy as well, and you just use all that card advantage to eventually win the game. It's very hard to evaluate this character. I definitely think there's going to be a lot of trying out, and drawing a card is a very powerful effect. I tentatively think that other Muna heroes are going to be slightly better, but I'm pretty convinced there's going to be a niche for Kauri. The question then becomes, is it a 2-star or a 3-star card? And I'm struggling with that. I could see it go either way. I think because there's a lot of potential in terms of different directions you can go with this hero, I'm going to give it 3 stars. Awesome, thanks as always for watching the video. If you enjoy it, there's going to be more to come still, so stay tuned. We have 2 more factions left, and I promise I will be doing them. Until then, have a good one. I hope you win all your altered games, and see you around.